because they are no longer who they were, but not yet who they are becoming. Now listen carefully. This is the stage where people start to give up, not because they cannot continue, but because they misinterpret the process. They think, nothing is working, I am failing, I am not moving forward. But in reality, you are in the most sensitive phase of transformation, where progress is happening beneath the surface. Now understand this. Every system in nature has a silent growth phase, a phase where nothing appears above ground, but everything is happening below it. Roots are spreading. Structure is forming, strength is building, but to an outside observer, it looks like nothing is happening, and that is exactly how your life feels right now. Now listen, the reason you feel stuck is because you are measuring growth by visibility, but real growth is not visible at first. It is structural, it is internal, it is invisible. Growth always feels like delay. Now understand this deeply. You are not delayed, you are developing. And development is not supposed to feel exciting. It is supposed to feel uncomfortable, because it is replacing what is familiar. Now listen carefully. Your mind will keep trying to pull you back to comfort, back to distraction, back to old habits, because comfort is familiar. And familiarity feels safe, even when it is limiting. But safety is not growth, and growth is not safety. Now understand this, every time you resist discipline, you strengthen your old identity. But every time you choose discipline, you weaken it. So right now, you are in a silent battle between repetition of comfort and repetition of discipline. And whichever one you repeat more becomes your future. Now listen, there is no dramatic moment where change happens instantly. There is only repetition, and repetition slowly shifts identity. So you don't wake up one day different, you become different through what you repeat daily. Now understand this deeply. This phase you are in, it is not meant to reward you immediately, it is meant to train you. And training is never instant. Training is repetition under resistance, and resistance is what you are feeling right now. Now listen carefully. You are not supposed to escape this phase. You are supposed to grow inside it. Because if you run from it, you reset your progress. But if you stay in it, you build strength that does not break easily. Now understand this, everything you are feeling right now, confusion, pressure, delay, discomfort, is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of construction. Something is being built in you that requires time, repetition, and patience. Now listen, you are not at the end, you are in the making. Now listen, this is the moment where everything becomes personal, because now it is no longer about understanding the process. It is about deciding whether you will continue it. And that decision is not emotional, it is behavioral. Now understand this deeply. Every person reaches a point where they feel like stopping, where the effort feels heavier than the motivation, where the results feel too far, where progress feels invisible. And in that moment, the mind starts negotiating. It says, maybe this is not for me. And maybe I should take a break. Or maybe I am forcing something that is not working. But that voice is not truth, it is resistance. Now listen carefully. Resistance appears right before transformation, not after it. Right before it. Right before it. Because the closer you are to change, the stronger resistance becomes. Now understand this, most people mistake resistance for a sign to quit, but resistance is actually proof that you are in the right place. Because nothing challenges you when you are going nowhere. Now listen, you are not weak for feeling this pressure. You are not broken for feeling this confusion. You are not behind for feeling this delay. You are simply in the final stage of transition. And this stage is the hardest because it requires continuation without clarity. Now understand this deeply. Clarity does not come first. Clarity comes after consistency. So if you stop because things are unclear, you will never reach clarity. Now listen carefully. This is the trap most people fall into. They expect understanding before action, but life gives understanding after action. So they remain stuck, not because they are incapable, but because they are waiting in the wrong order. Now understand this. The only thing separating you from your next level is not knowledge, it is repetition. What you do daily, what you choose repeatedly, what you refuse to stop doing, even when it feels slow. Now listen, this phase you are in, it is shaping your discipline. It is removing dependency on emotion. It is breaking your need for instant reward. It is forcing you into consistency. And consistency is what creates identity. Well, now understand this deeply. You are not the same person who started this journey. Even if it feels like nothing has changed, you have changed internally. Your awareness is higher. Your tolerance for distraction is lower. Your discomfort with old habits is increasing. That is transformation. Now listen carefully. This is not the end of your struggle. This is the end of your old identity. And endings always feel like pressure before they feel like freedom. Now understand this. If you continue through this phase, something powerful happens. You stop reacting emotionally to difficulty. You start responding with discipline. And that shift changes everything. Because now your life is no longer controlled by feeling. It is controlled by decision. Now listen, this is the final truth of part 1. You are not stuck. You are not lost. You are not failing. You are being transformed. And transformation always feels uncomfortable before it becomes undeniable. Now stay with it. Do not quit in the middle of becoming. Now listen. This is where the truth goes even deeper. Because once you realize you are not stuck, you start to realize something even more uncomfortable. You are being shaped, and shaping is not gentle. Shaping is pressure, shaping is resistance, shaping is repetition under discomfort. Now understand this deeply. Life does not shape you when you are comfortable. Life shapes you when you are forced to adapt. When old habits stop working. When old patterns collapse. When old comfort no longer feels satisfying. And in that moment, something inside you begins to shift. Now listen carefully. This phase you are in right now, it is not random. It is not punishment. It is not failure. It is restructuring. And restructuring always feels like instability because what was familiar is being removed and what is new is not fully formed yet. Now understand this. This is why your motivation disappeared. Because motivation belongs to the old version of you, the version that operated on comfort. The version that needed emotional energy to act. But now you are being forced into a different system. A system of discipline. A system of consistency. A system of execution without feeling. And that transition is uncomfortable. Now listen, you are not lazy. You are not lost. You are not incapable. You are in the middle of identity change. And identity change is always unstable at first. Because your brain is trying to delete old patterns, while new patterns are not yet automatic. Now understand this deeply. Every habit you built in the past is still trying to control your present. But your awareness is no longer aligned with those habits, so you feel conflict, internal conflict between who you were and who you are becoming. Now listen carefully. This conflict is not a problem, it is a sign of evolution. Now understand this. Every day you wake up, you are standing in a battlefield. On one side, comfort, ease, delay, distraction. On the other side, discipline, focus, execution, growth. And every single decision you make is a vote for one of these sides. Now listen, most people don't realize this. They think one small delay doesn't matter, one skipped task doesn't matter, one distraction doesn't matter, but it all matters. Because every action is a vote, and repetition of votes creates identity. Now understand this deeply. You are not becoming who you want. You are becoming who you vote for daily. And most people are unconsciously voting for comfort, while consciously wishing for success. That is why they stay stuck. Now listen carefully. There is a moment in every person's life where discipline feels unnatural, where doing the right thing feels heavy. Where staying focused feels uncomfortable. And in that moment, your identity is being tested, not by life, but by yourself. Now understand this. If you give in to emotion repeatedly, emotion becomes your identity. But if you override emotion repeatedly, discipline becomes your identity. Cool. And identity always wins in the long run. Now listen, this is why change feels hard. Because you are not just changing actions. You are changing control systems inside your mind. Who leads you, emotion or discipline? Now understand this deeply. Emotion says, do it when you feel like it. Discipline says, do it because it must be done. Emotion is temporary guidance. Discipline is permanent structure. Now listen carefully. Every time you choose discipline over emotion, you weaken your old self. And every time you choose emotion over discipline, you strengthen it again. So the battle is not external. It is repetition versus repetition. Now understand this, you are either training discipline or training avoidance. There is no neutral, because even avoidance is training something. Now listen, this is why your life feels inconsistent. Because your decisions are inconsistent. Decisions create unstable identity. Now understand this deeply. You do not need a new environment. You do not need a new opportunity. You need a new response to discomfort, because discomfort is where most people quit. But it is also where growth begins. Now listen carefully. Every time you feel resistance, that is not a stop sign. That is a signal that you are about to grow if you continue. Now understand this. Discipline is not built when it is easy. It is built when it is uncomfortable and you still continue. Now listen, this is where transformation becomes real. Because now it is no longer about understanding. It is about execution under pressure. When emotions are loud, when focus is low, when motivation is gone, and still you choose discipline. Now understand this deeply. This is the moment where identity changes permanently. Not when everything is perfect, but when everything is resisting you, and you still move forward. Now listen carefully. Most people wait for motivation to act. But motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. It appears and disappears. It depends on mood. But discipline does not depend on mood. It depends on decision. Now understand this. You will never reach a point where emotions stop interfering. That is not the goal. The goal is to act despite interference, because interference is always present, but control is a skill, and skills are built through repetition. Now listen, every time you act without feeling like it, you are building a stronger version of yourself, a version that does not negotiate with comfort. A version that does not wait for perfect conditions. A version that moves regardless of emotion. Now understand this deeply. This version of you already exists within potential. But potential is not enough. Listen, before you scroll away, before you assume you already know what this is about, I need you to stay with this moment. Because this is not motivation. This is not inspiration. This is truth. And truth does not always feel comfortable. In fact, truth usually feels like pressure. Like something inside you is being exposed. Something you've been avoiding. Something you've been distracting yourself from. Now listen carefully. You've been calling it delay. You've been calling it confusion. You've been calling it timing. But what if I told you it is none of that? What if the very thing you think is blocking you is actually protecting you? Because not every delay is rejection. Not every pause is punishment. Not every silence is abandonment. Sometimes delay is direction. Sometimes pause is preparation. Sometimes nothing happening on the outside means everything is being built on the inside. But you didn't see it that way. You saw delay and you panicked. You saw waiting and you doubted. You saw silence and you assumed rejection. But assumption is dangerous because it replaces truth with emotion. And emotion is not always accurate. Now listen, there is something deeper happening in your life right now. Something you cannot see clearly yet. Because clarity does not come in comfort. Clarity comes in distance. And right now, you are in the middle of something you don't fully understand. So you interpret it emotionally. You think, why is this not happening for me? Or why am I still here? Or why am I stuck? But what if the question is wrong? What if you are not stuck, but being positioned? What if the delay you are frustrated with is actually protection from something you are not ready for yet? Because not everything you want is ready for you. And not everything you are ready for is ready for now. Timing is not just about desire. Timing is about preparation. And preparation is not always visible. Sometimes preparation looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like rejection. Sometimes it looks like nothing is happening at all. But underneath that silence, something is being formed. Something is being structured. Something is being aligned. And you don't see it because you are focused on the delay. But delay is not absence. Delay is process. And process is always invisible at first. That is why most people quit too early. not because they are wrong, but because they cannot see what is happening behind the scenes. They judge the surface, but ignore the formation. They react to timing, but ignore transformation. And that is where they lose it. Not in failure, but in impatience. Because impatience always mislabels protection as rejection. And that mislabeling creates unnecessary frustration. But listen closely. What if nothing is wrong? What if the reason it hasn't happened yet is not because you are denied, but because you are being prepared? Now listen, this is where your understanding has to mature. Because most people only believe in timing when it works in their favor. But the moment timing slows down, they start questioning everything. They start questioning themselves. They start questioning life. They start questioning purpose. But let me tell you something you need to hear clearly. Just because it is not happening yet does not mean it is not happening for you. Plus, there is a difference between delay and denial. Delay is process, denial is final, and most people confuse the two. Now listen carefully. Life does not always give you what you want immediately, because immediate access can destroy unprepared identity. If everything you prayed for arrived at the exact moment you wanted it, you might not have the structure to handle it. You might not have the discipline to maintain it. You might not have the mindset to protect it. So what feels like delay is often protection from premature arrival. Because arrival without preparation creates collapse. What life is preventing, but you don't see it that way. Because your vision is emotional. You see desire, you see dreams, you see goals, but you don't see capacity. And capacity is what determines timing, not desire, not emotion, not urgency. Capacity is built in silence, through repetition, through resistance, through moments where nothing seems to be happening, but everything is being shaped. Now understand this deeply. The version of you that can handle your next level is not built in comfort. It is built in contradiction. It is built when things don't go your way and you still stay disciplined. It is built when you don't feel like it, but you still show up. It is built when nothing is rewarding you yet, but you keep moving anyway. And that is why delay exists. Because delay is not punishment. Delay is conditioning. It is shaping you into someone who can sustain what you asked for. But most people miss this completely. They think waiting means nothing is happening, but waiting is where everything is happening. Because waiting reveals who you are when nothing is supporting you. No results, no validation, no confirmation, just you and your discipline. And that is where most people break, not in public, in private, because they only know how to move when they see progress. But real growth happens when there is no visible progress at all, and you still continue. That is what builds strength. Now listen closely. What you call a delay might actually be alignment, because alignment is not always visible. Sometimes alignment feels like confusion. Sometimes alignment feels like distance. Sometimes alignment feels like silence. But silence is not empty. Silence is construction, and construction always happens out of sight. So when nothing is showing up externally, something may be forming internally. And if you rush that process, you interrupt what is being built. But if you trust it, you prepare yourself for what is coming. Now ask yourself something honest. Are you being delayed or are you being developed? Because those two experiences feel similar, but their outcomes are completely different. One creates frustration, the other creates foundation. And foundation is what determines whether you can carry what you are asking for. So maybe, just maybe, the delay is not against you. Maybe it is building you for what is ahead, even if you cannot see it yet. Now listen, this is where the truth starts to cut deeper. Because at some point you have to stop only asking a why is this happening to me? And start asking, ooh, what is this building in me? Because one question creates confusion and the other creates clarity. And clarity changes everything. Now understand this, you think you are ready for what you are asking for, but readiness is not decided by desire. Readiness is revealed by behavior under pressure. Because anyone can want something in comfort, but not everyone can sustain discipline in silence. Not everyone can stay consistent when nothing is rewarding them. Not everyone can keep going when results are invisible. And that is where truth is revealed, not in what you say, but in what you continue doing when nothing is changing. Now listen carefully. There are things in life you want, but you are not yet built to carry them. Not because you are not capable, but because you are not yet conditioned. And conditioning takes time. It takes repetition. It takes resistance. It takes moments where you feel like nothing is working, but you still stay in alignment. And that is exactly where most people quit, because they interpret silence as failure. But silence is not failure. Silence is formation. Now let me be direct with you. If everything you prayed for came too early, it could destroy the version of you that is still unstable. Because success without discipline becomes chaos. Opportunity without structure becomes waste. Blessing without preparation becomes pressure. And pressure without foundation becomes collapse. So what you call delay, life may call protection. Protection from what you are not ready to sustain yet. Protection from what would expose weak habits. Protection from what would amplify inconsistency. And you don't see that in the moment because the mind is focused on arrival, but life is focused on stability. You want results. Life wants responsibility. You want outcomes. Life wants identity. And identity must be built before outcome can be handled. Now understand this deeply. Every delay you experience is revealing something about your current capacity. Not your worth, not your destiny, your capacity. Because capacity determines timing. And capacity is not measured by dreams. It is measured by discipline. So when discipline is inconsistent, timing feels delayed. Not because life is against you, but because your system is still being built, and that building process is invisible. That is why it feels frustrating. Because you cannot see what is happening internally. You only see what is missing externally, but what is missing externally is often being developed internally. And if you interrupt that process, by quitting, by doubting, by stopping, you delay the very thing you are trying to reach. Now listen, this is not punishment, this is preparation. And preparation always feels like waiting. But waiting is not wasted. Waiting is where structure is formed. Waiting is where identity is tested. Waiting is where discipline is trained. So the question is not, why is this not happening? The real question is, am I becoming the version who can handle it? Because if you are not becoming it, you are not ready for it. And life will always protect you from what would break you, even if you don't understand it yet. Now listen, this is the moment everything becomes clear. Not because your situation changes, but because your understanding changes. And when understanding changes, confusion loses power. Now hear this deeply. You were never being rejected. You were never being ignored. You were never being forgotten. What you called delay was never absence. It was preparation, it was alignment, it was protection from arriving too early, protection from carrying what you were not yet structured to hold, protection from stepping into something before the version of you was stable enough to sustain it. Because life does not just give you things, life tests your ability to keep them. And what you cannot sustain, you will eventually lose. So sometimes, not getting what you want immediately is the most silent form of protection, because it forces you to develop what you lacked: discipline, patience, consistency, emotional control, identity stability. Now understand this, the delay you resisted may have been building the exact version of you needed for your next level. Not in theory, in reality. Because growth is not visible while it is happening. It is only visible when it is complete. And that is why you misjudged it. You judged the process while it was still forming you. But formation is not finished yet. And unfinished things always feel unclear. Now listen closely. You will look back one day and realize that what felt like delay was actually direction. What felt like silence was actually structure. What felt like nothing happening was actually everything being built. But you cannot see that clearly in the middle of it. Because the middle is designed to test your discipline, not your understanding. So you are not meant to fully understand it now. You are meant to remain consistent through it, because consistency is what completes the process, not confusion, not doubt, not overthinking, consistency. So this silence you are in, this delay you are questioning, This period where nothing feels clear, it is not punishment, it is training. And training is always repetitive, always uncomfortable, always unglamorous, but always necessary. Because without it, you cannot carry what is coming next. Now listen, this is where frustration starts to speak. Because silence is powerful, but silence is also uncomfortable. When nothing is changing fast enough, the mind begins to question everything. You start asking, why is this taking so long? I'm not there yet, but why is nothing working? And those questions feel logical, but they are emotional reactions, not truth. Now understand this deeply. Just because you do not see movement does not mean movement is not happening. But your mind is impatient. It wants proof, it wants results, it wants confirmation that your effort is working. But life does not operate on your emotional timeline. Life operates on preparation cycles. And preparation does not show immediate results. It shows delayed outcomes. And that delay is where most people lose patience, because they confuse delay with failure. But delay is not failure. Delay is filtration. It is removing what is unstable. It is exposing what is inconsistent. It is revealing who cannot continue without immediate reward. And that is uncomfortable to accept, because it means the process is testing you, not just helping you. Now listen carefully. Every time you feel like nothing is happening, you are actually in one of the most important phases of your life. The phase where discipline is being tested without reward, where consistency is being measured without recognition, where identity is being formed without validation. And most people fail here, not because they are incapable, but because they are impatient. They stop showing up, they slow down, they start negotiating with effort. And once negotiation begins, discipline weakens. Because discipline does not negotiate, it executes. Now understand this clearly. The moment you start needing results to stay consistent, you are no longer disciplined. You are dependent. Dependent on outcome, dependent on motivation, dependent on visible progress. But real growth does not require visibility. It requires trust in process, and trust is tested in silence. So when nothing is happening externally, the real question is not, is this working? The real question is, am I still working? Because that is the only thing that determines outcome. Not your feelings, not your doubts, not your frustration, your repetition. Now listen, there is a stage in transformation where everything feels stuck. You are doing the work, but nothing is moving fast. You are putting effort, but nothing is reflecting immediately. And in that stage, your mind will try to convince you to stop. It will say, this is not working. This is pointless. You are wasting time. But that voice is not truth. It is resistance, appears exactly at the point where change is closest, not when you are far, but when you are close enough for discomfort to increase. And that is why most people quit right before breakthrough, because the pressure increases before the result appears. But pressure is not punishment. Pressure is preparation intensifying. And if you can stay steady under that pressure, something begins to shift, not instantly visible, but internally irreversible. You begin to build a version of yourself that does not depend on results to continue. And that version is rare, because most people collapse without feedback. But discipline does not need feedback. It creates its own proof over time. So the frustration you feel right now is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something is being shaped. And shaping always takes longer than expecting. But what is shaped properly lasts longer than anything rushed. Now the question becomes simple. Will you let silence discourage you? Or will you let it develop you? Because silence is doing one of two things. It is either breaking your patience or building your strength. Now listen, this is where most people get mentally exhausted, not because they are doing too much, but because they are expecting too much too soon. They expect clarity before consistency. They expect results before repetition. They expect confirmation before commitment. But life does not work in that order. Life rewards consistency first, and clarity comes later. Now understand this deeply. When you are in a season of delay, your emotions will try to become your guide. But emotions are not designed to lead you through uncertainty. They are designed to react to what is already visible. So when nothing is visible, your emotions panic. They create doubt, they create fear, they create urgency to quit or change direction. But none of that is truth. It is just discomfort speaking. Now listen carefully. Every great transformation goes through a stage where nothing looks like progress. A stage where effort feels invisible. A stage where discipline feels unrewarded. And that is exactly where most people give up. Not at failure, but at invisibility. Because humans struggle with invisible progress. They need proof, they need validation, they need something they can point to. But growth does not always give you that. Sometimes growth is silent, sometimes growth is internal. Sometimes growth is happening in your mindset before it ever appears in your life. Now think about this, the person you are becoming is not built in moments of success. It is built in moments of repetition without reward. When you show up and nothing changes immediately, but you still show up again. When you do the work and nobody notices, but you still do it again. When you feel like stopping, but you continue anyway. That is where identity is formed, not in results, in repetition. Wait, repetition. Now listen, if you can stay consistent in a season where nothing is giving you feedback, you are building a level of strength most people never reach. Because most people only stay disciplined when they feel progress. But real discipline does not depend on feeling, it depends on decision. And decision is stronger than emotion when it is repeated enough times. So right now, this silence you are in, this delay you are questioning, this phase that feels slow, it is not empty. It is training your identity to stop depending on instant results. Because life is not built for instant thinkers, it is built for consistent builders. And builders understand one thing deeply. Nothing meaningful is created quickly. Everything valuable is created through time, repetition, and patience under pressure. So if you are still here, still trying, still showing up, even when nothing feels like it is moving, you are not behind. You are being developed. And development is never loud, but it is always powerful. Now keep going, not because you see results, but because you are becoming someone who does not stop when results are missing.